Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our Parent University workshop today. I am so excited about today's workshop as I think it's going to be both informative and inspirational for all of the parents who have had our kiddos who have been home online and working in this virtual world for so long. Today's workshop is going to be just great, giving tips from two amazing art teachers here in Long Beach Unified who are going to share some tips on making art fun and engaging for the whole family, but also purposeful in supporting brain development, problem solving, and promoting creativity. I just know that all of our parents today are going to get a lot of really great information from today's workshop. If along the way you have questions or you'd like to ask our two art teachers here today some questions, there is a Google form that will be right underneath the screen. So please feel free to jump in and ask your questions via the Google form. But we are going to save our questions till the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, go ahead and jot it down, but we will be answering at the end of our presentation today. Okay, so that's a little bit of the taking care of business. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in. I'm going to stop talking so I can pass it over to our two amazing art teachers, Miss Whip and Miss Rumion. It's all yours. Thanks for being with us here today, everybody.
Thank you. My name is Nika, and I am the visual arts teacher for TK through 5th grade at the Smart Start program at Stevenson Elementary. I also have a kindergarten daughter at Minigan in LBUSD.
And I'm Christine Whip, and I'm the LBUSD art curriculum leader. And I'm also an art teacher at Renaissance, our high school for the arts, where I teach costume design and 3D art. I also have an LBUSD student. He's a senior at Millikan. We're so glad that you could join us today. Okay, it's already happening. There we go. Let's start by going over why kids thrive when they make art. Art promotes creativity. It encourages neural connections in their brains, really helps them build and develop their fine motor skills. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later and give you some activities and suggestions for really helping to build fine motor skills. Art develops problem-solving abilities. It helps kids understand themselves and their world, and it helps kids connect. So lots of good reasons to get our kiddos engaged in art.
Over about maybe the last 5 or 6 years, I've really been transitioning in my thinking about art making with children. Previously, I was really focused on sort of an end product, what we were going to make and hang up on the refrigerator when we were done. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've sort of transitioned more into focusing on the process of art making and less focus on what the end product will be. And in that transition, I've realized that both as adults and as children, we take more risks when we're focused on the process and not worried about this end product. We're more likely to put out new ideas. We're more likely to try new things, to explore, when we're really about this process of discovery and exploration together. I've also realized in this transition that when I'm kind of giving kids this opportunity to explore with me, that I'm telling them that I value their voice and that I value their thinking and that I value what they want to put into what we're making together. This is a very hard challenge and transition for me. It's been over the last couple of years, both as a teacher and as a parent, because we really wanted that product in the end. But I really realized that so much of that real critical thinking, problem solving, creative thinking, and also just memory making with my child has come from this transition to more of a play approach and a process approach to art making. In this slide, I put together some of my favorites for at-home art making, starting with recyclables. So I've listed here cardboard boxes of all sizes, paper rolls, egg cartons, and in the photos, you can see there's so many different things that you can make with those types of materials, from structures to different types of houses and robots, and we have a tendency to let our kids explore because there isn't an additional expense to those materials. So it really gives us a chance to kind of dig in with those recyclable materials. In terms of basic supplies, my favorites are vinegar and baking soda for that classic explosion experiment, but kind of experimenting with that in a variety of ways. Food coloring, which I'm going to talk a lot about in my activities coming up, shaving cream, and tinfoil. These are all 99-cent store, Dollar Tree type items. So I really kind of look out for them and stock up because there's a variety of ways we can use these basic supplies in this kind of discovery, play-based art making. In terms of art supplies, I like to have scissors on hand, glue of different types, and tape. I really want to talk about tape. With our young artists, tape, you can give them a variety of different types of tape. For example, maybe you give them blue painter's tape and masking tape and let them discover which tape works best for what they're trying to create. Let them figure out which is going to function for what their idea is. In addition to that, tape has a lot of fine motor skill development attached to it. Tape, being able to pull tape, cut tape, manage the stickiness of tape. There's a lot of fine motor development that goes with that particular tool. And again, Dollar Tree, 99-cent store, different types of tape for them to explore with. As far as needle and thread and fabric scraps, this is one of my daughter's favorites. And burlap is great. So is felt. But also your kitchen dish towel that now has too many holes in it, or the sock that you can't find the matching one to, these become perfect tools. My daughter loves making her own creations out of the sock that I can't find the matching one to. And again, no additional expense repurposing these basic supplies. Also crayons and watercolor paint. With watercolor paint, I go for the Dollar Tree. I'm not really focused on any sort of high-end brand. I want us to have the materials and feel free to use them. In addition, on this slide, I put my favorite YouTube drawing channel. This is a directed drawing instructional channel. The instructor is excellent at giving kids confidence in their drawing. I like to include this one because he also has episodes that are geared towards preschool learners. So if you are looking for something for sort of preschool through high school, this particular YouTube channel has some great videos with a variety of drawing topics that really build confidence. So for my first activity, I'm starting with the classic Crayon Resist. Crayon Resist has very basic supplies to it. It has the white, just a white piece of paper, crayons, and watercolor. For my demo today, I am going to focus on the white crayon in this Crayon Resist project because I really believe that's where the magic occurs. All you really need to do is, I've pre-drawn something out, but you draw something out with the white crayon on the paper, and then you take your watercolor paint. And as you add watercolor on top of it, the crayon will resist the watercolor and your drawing will emerge from underneath it. And I love this because there's such a magic to it. Kids will marvel over revealing the drawing underneath. So this one right here is actually going to be a treasure map. And as they keep painting through it, they're going to discover where the treasure is at the end of the map as they paint their way through the whole thing. There's just a magic element to this that is very exciting, in addition to a science conversation about why the crayon is resisting the watercolor. I've also seen this used with kids when they want to make some sort of special announcement about something. I've also seen this used when kids are learning how to spell their name or sight words or anything that they're sort of working on that you want to build a really engaging and exciting experience. That white crayon really just gives that magic of the reveal of what's underneath. So I really enjoyed this one as a really simple supply: crayons, watercolor, and paper.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about developing fine motor skills. First of all, what do we mean by fine motor skills? So that's the coordination between your child's small muscles, like those in their hands and wrists and fingers, and coordinating that with their eyes. You know, we artists tend to have really well-developed fine motor skills, and a lot of people will attribute an artist's skill to just, you know, their pure talent, but actually it's been practice that has been developed, and so those muscles have really developed and serve their art. So it's not just the talent. I'm going to stop sharing here and actually take you through a variety of easy activities that you can do at home to really help develop those fine motor skills. Our kids have been on devices a lot this year in this virtual learning environment, and probably this is one area that we really want to encourage to get those hands moving, making stuff. So one of the first things is cutting with scissors. Seems like such a basic skill, but you would be surprised by even older kids that just haven't had the opportunity to master that. So giving kids opportunities to cut with scissors is really important, but you can make it fun. Obviously, you know, with the younger ones, you would probably start off with thinner paper, you know, such as maybe cutting out pictures out of magazines. Maybe they're, you know, cutting out pictures and pasting them down to make a little collage. I discovered that Better Homes and Gardens has a lot of cat pictures. And then maybe you elevate it to a thicker paper, like a construction paper. And, you know, they could draw shapes on to cut out. Yeah, you could help them to draw on the letters of their name. The thicker the paper, the more challenging it is. And so the level of difficulty gets a little bit harder, and but it's helping develop those fine motor skills even more. And then you can even take it up a level to say cardboard. I love working with a variety of thicknesses of cardboard. I teach a high school 3D art class, so we make a lot of things out of cardboard. But one of the best ones is food packaging, cereal boxes, you know, box of granola bars, because the cardboard has a heaviness to it. Often it has kind of a coating on it, which it can be nice. But it's also manageable. It's still thin and it's very workable, where, you know, cardboard from a box, a lot more difficult. So cardboard can be a great thing for just allowing kids to cut out, again, various shapes. You know, maybe they're drawing on shapes, paper dolls, remember those? So just giving opportunities to cut a variety of thicknesses can go a long way in helping to develop those fine motor skills. All right, so I'm gonna move cutting out of the way, and let's talk about other types of things to do with the hands. Let's do beading, just a little bit. Being able to bead things, put things on a string, really, again, helps with those fine motor skills using their hands. You know, you could get beads, but you could also use things like Cheerios or other things that would be easy to put on. The trick to beading is giving them something to thread it with. So this is a plastic, like a big plastic embroidery needle. I got a package of 30 of these off Amazon for like $4. But you don't even have to use this. A real easy way to do this would be to take a toothpick, or actually I broke a stick off a skewer. Take a piece of tape. Ika was talking about tape earlier. And whatever string you're using, just tape that to the end. Well, and what kind of string could I use? Really pretty much anything. This is a stretchy cord, has an elastic quality to it. You know, you can get it in a craft store, probably at the 99-cent store, but you don't really even need this. Any kind of string is going to work. Some embroidery floss, perhaps you have some twine, maybe an old thing of yarn laying about. You could even use dental floss. This works great for beading. Okay, so the thing with beading is, if a kid just places it on, I'll start with my Cheerios, it's gonna, well, the tape actually stopped that. I'm gonna have to fix that a little bit more, but you need something to stop it at the end. So a good way to do that is leave yourself a little bit of extra length, tie it around something to act as a stopper, like a pencil, and then they can bead from there. So they have, you know, an improvised needle, something that's gonna go on, and then it will stop here. And then you can help with tying that off. But beading can be a really just great way for them. And it's fun, you know, they can make little necklaces or whatever. So I think the idea too is not thinking that, you know, doing art with your kids doesn't mean you're having to go out and buy a lot of supplies. Often there are all kinds of things around the house that you can use. talk about a little bit about some sewing activities. Nika mentioned those. Embroidery really can develop those fine motor skills. Now, if I was starting this off with a younger kid, you'd want to make sure you were giving a needle that had a really blunt end to it. You wouldn't want anything sharp. Maybe as they got a little bit older, you can change that out. The trick with embroidery, especially for kids, is making sure there's a really big eye in the needle, and then giving them an opportunity to play around with stitching. Felt is great, super inexpensive. It cuts really nicely without fraying. Gives kids a chance to practice some different stitches. You can also, do grid type things on this like plastic. This is great for almost weaving type techniques. If you threw in some different colors, you could do some fun pattern making. Again, there really are no rules about this. And like Nika mentioned earlier, and I think we want to emphasize this, it's a chance to explore with materials and really give them the opportunity to see where the materials will take them and what they can do with them. It's really not always about the end product. Oh, one more. Tracing. So coloring books are great. Anytime kids are holding a pencil or a crayon or a paintbrush, they are using fine motor skills. But you can elevate the challenge and help develop that even more. And one great way is tracing. So instead of just coloring the picture, by placing a piece of white paper over it, it helps if they get a light source. If you're using just like regular copy paper, it's pretty translucent. And if you put it over something, especially something that has pretty dark lines on it, and they have a light source, even if it's near a window or a lamp or something else, they'll be able to see through it. And then just tracing the main primary lines. That's kind of a real way to develop drawing skills. It's kind of satisfying for kids to see that too, that they can recreate this. And at the same time, develop those fine motor skills as well. All right, I think that was all our fine motor skills. I'm gonna share the screen again.
Okay, ice painting. Ice painting is one of my most favorite activities. I love it because it's inexpensive, because it's easy, and because it invites a ton of thinking and experimentation and discovery. It's also very engaging for a variety of ages. Ice painting is actually one of my most popular stations at open house with parents. So I want to go into how you make ice paint and then different ideas of what you can do with it. So to make ice paint is really easy. You start with an ice cube tray. You're going to put in a dollop of primary color paint. So you would put a section of red, a section of blue, a section of yellow, just a dollop of paint in each one of those little compartments. Then you add water to fill it up like you would if you were making a regular ice cube. And then I like to add in a popsicle stick to each one of the sections to give it a handle. Then you freeze it. And then once frozen, take it out of the freezer, pop them out of the ice cube tray and open up a white piece of paper. And then you just let them go and see what they discover and figure out. Again, none of this is product driven. I'm not worried about this being something that I want to put in my front window when I'm done. If you look at this slide, all of the things created on this slide were from those original red, blue, and yellow ice paints, which really gives you an idea of how much kids can take this in any direction they want. They're going to explore color mixing as they're painting one color of ice paint on top of another one. They're going to figure out what happens as the ice starts melting, so you can have discussions about solid to liquid. They're also going to discover, as things start melting, the way the ice moves differently across the page. I like to invite kids as well to paint their hand or paint their foot to have a real sensory experience of this tool as they're exploring different ways that they can mix colors, temperature, solid to liquid, and they really figure out so many different things if you just sort of give them the ice paint and stand back. and let them figure out what different colors they can make. And as it turns into more of a diluted paint, how that changes the medium. And then as they keep painting over the same spots on the paper, eventually it turns into a liquid, and then you can invite them to bring out a paintbrush and go from there. So there's a variety of different ways of using this medium. In the next slide, I want to talk about an extension of this ice paint. So this is sort of an early childhood extension of ice paint. It's one of my favorites. Sensory bins are very popular in early childhood. All a sensory bin is some sort of container. You give kids to add stuff to it and mix it together and see what they discover as they're adding different things together. With ice paint in sensory bins, I like to do the same as I described in the previous slide, where you put the primary colors in each one, add the water, and freeze to make ice cubes. But in this one, you can also do glitter with water. It's a very manageable way to handle glitter because glitter is crazy. But if you put glitter plus the water and freeze it into an ice cube, it makes it a lot less messy. Also, you can use food coloring. You can put little tiny toys inside of the ice, inside of the water to freeze in. You can put leaves, petals, blueberries, anything that'll fit inside of a little ice cube section. Add the water, freeze. Once that's done, you can take them to their storage bin. As far as storage bins go, my recommendation, what I like is a clear storage bin so that they can really see the colors mixing. I also really like the shallow, like the under the bed type storage containers so that they can kind of put it on the ground and see what's happening. And then you let them add the ice cubes into the storage bin the way that they want. You can give them a variety of different other materials to add in. I like things like warm water, like a pitcher of warm water, a pitcher of cool water, a pitcher of water with bubbles in it, some kind of soapy water. You can give them shaving cream. This is where you can bring out your vinegar and your baking soda and have an explosion happen in the middle of the sensory bin. But it's really just an opportunity for them to add items one at a time and see how they kind of interact with each other. In terms of color mixing, in terms of solid to liquid, in terms of texture. And I guarantee you, as the mixing happens, their imaginations are going to start running. And I remember, this is my daughter, and I remember on this day, by the end of our sort of hour and a half with this sensory bin, she's like, Mommy, it's a unicorn rainbow lake that she had created in this sensory bin. Again, no end product. We're going to dump this out at the end. We're not hanging this on the refrigerator. But the process of making it, there was so much thinking and learning that went into it, and joy, and landed her in a place that really invited a lot of creative thinking. So I really recommend ice paint for all ages. This is sort of the early childhood version of it. But as I mentioned, through adult, the ice painting is a really interesting and inexpensive way to explore color mixing and solid to liquid, and a really kind of alternative method for mixing paint.
I love that so much. So another activity that you might consider is if you're doing some painting with actual paint, that will help enhance fine motor skills and just allow kids to explore art making in non-traditional methods. So I'm going to demo again. Stop sharing. I'm going to move my screen down. So I have, the three primary colors here. By the way, if you're buying paint for kids, I recommend good old cheap tempera paint. It's water-based. If they get it on their clothes, it'll wash out. You don't. I would avoid acrylic paints. We'll save that for their high school painting classes when they're able to handle that material a little bit better. So the cheapest tempera paints you can find. But the activity can actually, is not using a paintbrush, thinking of other ways to put paint down. So one technique is to use tongs and dip it in the paint and with a cotton ball and make their creation that way. They can actually, the three primary colors mixed together will reveal many other colors. So they could experiment with that on their own. If you didn't have some tongs handy, a clothespin could work really well. Same type of thing. Dip it in, use the cotton ball. They're creating. Q-tips are great. I go through these all the time in my classroom. They're cheap, they're easy to use. They actually allow a fair amount of control. They're great for doing, a technique called pointillism, where you can create a work of art with just a series of dots. You can mix those up. Another technique would actually be to take a bunch of Q-tips and wrap them with a rubber band. You could even vary the number of them, from a little to a lot. Dip those in your paint. Now you're getting a whole series of dots at one time. Maybe mixing that, layering that over something else that you have done. So again, think about cheap and easy materials that you might have. You could do almost printmaking types of activities with easy to find materials that you have at home. The cotton balls, the Q-tips, a potato sliced in half can actually be something that you dip in paint. So again, all about the experimentation. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, I think we missed one, right? Yes.
Okay, so food, fun, art, and cooking. I love infusing color theory in the kitchen. So for this one, if you're making cupcakes or you're making cakes and you have batter that is white or semi-white, or you're using some sort of white frosting, all you need to add to that is food coloring, and it turns into an experimentation with color theory. So if you're mixing up your batter and you're putting them into separate little bowls, and then we talk about what color cupcakes do we want to make, and allow our children to come up with ideas. I think we should put 2 drops of blue and 2 drops of yellow and figure out what color it makes. And then keep talking and thinking, how do we make a darker green? How do we make a lighter purple? And even discuss after baking, will the color stay the same? And essentially, you're still just making cupcakes or a cake, but you've now infused all of this exploration and learning about color theory. Similarly, with pasta noodles, I've put in here my Stregonona book recommendation. If your kids are not familiar and are interested in summer reading, Stregonona has a series of books, and her magic pasta pot are awesome to pair with this pasta lesson. And it's kind of the same sort of idea, where you take your different Ziploc bags this time, add in different combinations of food coloring drops, and come up with sort of theories of what colors they will make. Cook your pasta, add the cooked pasta into the Ziploc bags, you rinse the pasta, you add your, sauce or your toppings, and you have dinner. But in the process, you also came up with all these different ideas on how to create different colors in a really engaging and kind of useful way. It's a lot of fun that you've made dinner, but you now have rainbow pasta, or you just made pasta in somebody's favorite colors, or you just made a pasta that goes with the holiday that you're celebrating. But in the process, you're really figuring out how to mix colors and how to engage those colors with different types of materials. So I highly recommend sort of infusing color theory and mixing and exploration with the kitchen.
It is skipping slides. I'm sorry. Let's go back. Did we miss the color theory book one?
Yes.
Let's go back. There it is.
Okay, so going along with the color theory ideas, which is basically having children learn how primary red, blue, and yellow turn into secondary colors. It also talks about some sort of specific names of different colors and that type of thing. These are my favorites in read alouds. So if you're interested in summer reading, again, I highly recommend these. You can search any of these titles on YouTube and you'll find them in digital form. But I also really love the Long Beach Public Library To Go program. If you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend it. We've been using it this past year and it's amazing. And all of these titles are available in actual turn the page book form. So I highly recommend, if you are doing some summer reading and you're engaging in some of these color mixing projects, checking out some of these really beautiful books.
Okay. So this activity, we're going to go through a little 3D activity with salt dough sculpture. And this is super easy to make. It's only 3 ingredients, salt, flour, and water. And it makes a really easy to form dough that even young kids, I think, would be able to master it. So I'm going to stop sharing. And once again, I'm going to go down to my little demo table here. Okay, so we have all our ingredients, super easy. Half a cup of flour, a quarter cup of salt, and a quarter cup of water. And you literally just mix that together until it's thoroughly mixed. It makes a pretty small batch. If you wanted to make a bigger batch, you could just double or triple your ingredients. But I think actually starting off with a small one like this makes it really manageable for kids. I would keep some extra flour handy, let them get their fingers in it, scoop that up. I'll get a nice sized ball of dough about this size. They can knead it a little bit. Some wax paper or parchment paper to flatten it out. And then they can use this to make anything. Their favorite animal. You could use cookie cutters. I'd really actually just encourage letting kids explore whatever they wanted to make with it. The beauty about working with a material like this, similar to working with clay, is it's super forgiving, and something doesn't really turn out the way you want, then roll it back up into a ball and start again. It's just a great activity for exploration. And then you can bake it. So similarly to when we work with clay and we fire it in a kiln, this you can simply bake in the oven. Once you have got it into whatever desired shape you want, place it in the oven on a cookie sheet, bake it at 250 degrees, pretty low heat, for about 3.5 hours. And that's on that slide. So if you needed to go back in the video and watch that again, you can. Really easy and a fun way to work with some 3D materials.
Okay, so for taking it outside and leaf rubbing is also a pretty classic kind of children's art activity. It has very simple materials. It just has the white piece of paper, some peeled crayons, and leaves. And essentially you just put the leaf underneath the white piece of paper and start rubbing so that the texture of the leaf emerges. But in my demo here today, I wanted to invite you to think about other items that you could use in place of leaves. So I try to encourage kids to look around the house, inside and outside. So we know the leaf project will work, but what else do you have at home that will also create a textured rubbing? So things like paper clips, tools, bobby pins, yarn, you can kind of move the yarn around and rub on top of that. The lace or any types of trims like this. Legos work great. So I want to kind of show you how that works. Just like with the leaf, you put the Lego or whatever the item is underneath. You take your crayon, you lay it down, and you just rub on top of whatever the item is so that the texture emerges. And that's really what the discussion is the idea of texture with kids and finding different materials around the house that will produce different types of texture. This is a piece of lace, kind of hard to see on that black paper, but then you can layer colors on top of each other as you see different types of shapes emerge, and they can come up with a variety of ways of using that material. So in this one, I can show you how we can just sort of layer different colors and shapes and different things, and they can practice how they like to see those things kind of the colors on top of each other or the different shapes. So again, the leaf works great, but I think that's just the beginning. I think there's a bunch of different ways that you could sort of look around the house and find a variety of items. These are pretty easy items to find, and kind of put the paper on top, lay the crayon down, and see what sort of textures emerge. As an extension of working with the leaves, I also really like doing watercolor work with leaves. Again, just that dollar store watercolors works for me. Taking a piece of paper, putting the leaf on top. I like to put little loops of tape underneath the leaf when I'm working with young painters so that the leaf doesn't do a lot of movement. And then encouraging the paint on top of it and just sort of let the watercolor colors mix together to create new colors. And then when they remove the leaf, there's going to be sort of a positive and negative experience here of the leaf print. So here's another example of the same idea. I painted on top of the leaf, yellow and blue. They're going to start seeing green form. So again, sort of reinforcing some of that color mixing and color theory. And when you remove the leaf, you've got this leaf print and you have this experience of positive and negative space. So that's sort of another way to take the leaf projects from leaf rubbing to watercolor with leaves, and also inviting kids to figure out a variety of other textures they can use with the peeled crayons.
So I believe that takes us to the end of our demo. We want to encourage all of you to experiment with your kids, and we'd love for you to share with us what you make. So feel free to tag us on our social media tags on Twitter at LBUSD Arts and on Instagram at the Smart Start Stevenson. But I think we want to perhaps turn it over to some questions.
Yeah, we do have some questions from families out there. So, gosh, so many fun things. I wish my kids were smaller or younger so I could do some of those things. But I really enjoyed hearing all of your different art projects and crafts. And I thank you so much for demonstrating so many of them for us. We had a couple parents that did write in with some questions. So the first one, if you could just re-mention the name of the YouTube channel that you had mentioned earlier, if you could repeat that for us, please.
Okay, it's the Art Kids Hub. Can we go back to that slide?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up, and you know what? That's okay if they see us scrolling back through the slides.
Sure. We live in a Zoom world. That's okay.
It's the Art for Kids Hub.
There it is.
Art for Kids Hub, and it has tons of episodes, and I really recommend it for all different levels of artists, but I really like this one because it also has that preschool component to it, and I hadn't seen a lot of drawing channels that engaged that young learners.
Thank you for repeating that. We had another parent that wrote in appreciating your use of upcycled materials and resources, and she was just wondering, is that common with our Long Beach Unified teachers to be kind of resourceful and looking for their materials like that?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Most definitely. Okay. I mean, partly that's a practical matter. You know, we don't have huge budgets. We're really good at making it stretch, but I actually think it's also a conscious choice. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value in showing that to kids, and there's a whole movement in contemporary art and a lot of really meaningful, thought-provoking work that contemporary artists are doing around recycled materials and challenging the idea of what art making materials are, that it's not just, oil painting on canvases. There's a lot of possibilities. So I think, we do it for practical reasons, but I think we also do it for artistic reasons.
I love that.
And I think also the idea of these lifelong learners, this is not just what exists in the classroom, but recyclable materials is something that they will have at home. And so that for them to continue that thinking that look around and see what you have around you to sort of fulfill whatever it is that you're trying to create, that this is not an isolated classroom experience, that being a creative person that wants to make things is forever and always anywhere that you are. And I think that having that recycled materials introduction as part of the classes opens their eyes to the possibility of how they can use their cereal box or, the paper towel roll at home.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's great. And one last question here is, what strategies do you recommend for a student to focus more on the process instead of the product, i.e. a child saying it doesn't look right, or I think I might have messed up or something like that? Any strategies?
So part of what I've learned in that process, because when we first started, there was definitely like, I don't like it, what am I going to do? And what I work with kids is no, we don't do the second piece of paper. Let's talk about how can we cut this? How can we fold it? How can we add something to it? And also that message of if what you got out of your art making today was strategies you don't want to repeat or something that you learned, that was a positive outcome. So if you figured out that you used too much water or next time you want to use more blue paint, then celebrating that was a success. You figured something out about your art making. And also encouraging kids to not be focused on perfect, but to be focused on the process of spending time making art and what you're going to figure out. I always tell them that they have a toolbox in their brain and a toolbox in their heart. And when we're doing these different lessons, we're adding those things into our toolbox in our brain and in our heart. And it could be something like perseverance. It could be something like I needed to just look at it from a different angle. I needed to take a break and come back. Those sort of like approach skills, but also just if you figure out something that you don't want to repeat or something you want to try next time, you were successful in that art making session.
Yeah, I think that was such a great question to the viewer who asked that, because I think that's actually sometimes more of a challenge for adults than it is for kids, that we often are so product oriented. So I think really being conscious of that and letting that go within ourselves and losing yourself in the process. And I think kids, given the right environment, are able to do that sometimes much more easily. And that's why, I would encourage grownups to do these activities too. You can get lost in that process. And that's where the joy is. The joy for the learner. And I always say for teachers, the joy in teaching as well.
Oh my gosh. Our last question that we have here was more of a comment. It was just, thank you so much for sharing this information. This parent loved it. And I can't express my own sentiment is exactly the same too. I learned a lot, and I just enjoyed both of your enthusiasm for art and for teaching so many skills in between with the art. So I appreciate you for both being here. Long Beach Unified is lucky to have you both on our team here. So thank you for being here with us today. Parents, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, whether you're watching us live or you're watching it on a YouTube link a little bit later. We thank you all for being here, and I just hope everybody has a great afternoon and take some of this with you and have some fun with your kids making some art.